it didn't make sense that I missed a deadline. In fact, I remember my friend who had said, "Hey, Moji, what's up with your applications and all of that?" My colleague, and he said, I missed Harvard deadline because I couldn't finish my personal statement. And it unglashed me and said, "No, nobody does that. You need to prioritize yourself." And I said, "Look, I'm applying to other schools, Stanford, NYU, and what have you." Guess what? This has never been done. A month after, Harvard emailed me.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, viewers. You're welcome to another exciting episode of The Adventures, and I am your host, Kunle Olufemi. As you know, on The Adventures, we seek to share the story of courage and vision behind the brands and the businesses that you see around you every day. And by sharing their story, we hope that you will be able to pick one or two lessons from their journeys and be able to even get to success faster in your own entrepreneurial journey. Today, we have someone I will call a sister, a friend of many decades, right? Maybe two decades now, thereabout. In the studio, will be sharing with us, what I consider to be a very peculiar, entrepreneurial story, right? I've interviewed a couple of entrepreneurs in this adventure, and it's not unusual for people to be in a paid job and then for them to resign and start something and at some point resign. But our own journey has a different bent to it, a different twist to it. And I can't really wait to get into it, because I think there are a lot of learnings for us to pick from, have very unique experience, right? My friend is, I will keep her name under wrap, but she's built a legal career across three continents, right? Starting from Templars in Lagos to Watson Farley and Williams in London to Schwartz LLC in New York. So she's been all over the place, right? Over 15 years, she advised investment managers and institutions on fund formation, regulatory compliance, and cross-border transactions, the kind of pedigree that opens every door for people. And this has opened a particular door for her called Salt Advisory, a firm she founded and leads as CEO, providing strategic operational support to emerging fund managers and businesses across Africa, Europe, and North America. It's a gap only someone who has spent years on the inside of the system could see clearly. And of course, she saw that and she's feeling it. My friend holds a degree, as a matter of fact, a master's degree from Harvard, a Harvard Law LLM, and a Harvard Business School certificate, and dual bar admission in Nigeria and in New York. In 2025, she delivered the keynote at the Holland Africa Business Forum in 2025, a fitting stage for someone whose story is one of building and not just advising. So, my friend is not just an advisor, she's also a builder. Please welcome with me today a friend and a sister of many years, Moji Fashola. Hi, Moji. Good to have you in the studio.
Thank you so much. Good morning, good afternoon, KO. And hello, everyone. It's nice to be here. I feel very humbled, actually, to be here. And thank you so much for having me and for giving me worthy of saying one or two things to the listeners. Thank you all very much. And I look forward to an engaging session.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm sure you have more than one or two things to say.
We'll see. We'll see.
No, trust me, I do. And normally I like to start these conversations by asking, our guests to tell us a little about themselves and what they do. And the way I used to say it jokingly is that we never can tell your next client may be on my, timeline. So, take this as your unpaid advert, so to say. All right. So if you will, make a start with that. Tell us a little bit about what you who you are and what you do. I've read your profile, but maybe one or two things I might have missed. Who you are, what you do, a little bit about the scale of your operations. I will basically just take it up from there. Over to you, Moji.
All right, thank you so much, Kale. So, like you mentioned earlier, I'm CEO at Salt Advisory. We are an advisory firm largely focused on the private equity and venture capital space in Africa. Pretty much what we do, we advise fund managers, investment managers who are raising capital. We support them in raising their capital to get to first close and post first close. We provide outsourced back office function in the areas of legal, finance, ESG, HR. Our business thesis is founded on the ability to allow first time and emerging managers to scale their business and also be sustainable, such that rather than them having to hire their internal general counsel, a CFO, an ESG manager, which a lot of investors would want, you can outsource the entirety of your back office function to us, reducing costs, but also you would have access to high quality talent that you would not have been able to afford as a first time manager. So, in a nutshell, that's what we do. Recently, we set up a law firm so that we can deliver a suite of legal services as part of the support that we provide to our clients. We're also setting up, we've also just recently acquired a license in Mauritius to provide fund administration business, which is a tailored service to fund managers in that space. I'll keep it there for now in terms of what we do.
That's really, really impressive, right? And thank you for sharing all that you have shared. Questions popping up already, but I will try and kind of keep myself, under control. And then let's just take it one piece at a time. So, if I hear you correctly, on one hand, you kind of support founders, right, who are trying to raise funds for their entrepreneurial adventures, so to say. And then when they're able to raise the fund and kick the business going, you also kind of provide end-to-end back office solution to them, right? Such that they don't have to worry about certain things, especially overhead, right? That is likely to make their, cost of operations balloon, so to say. Uh, did I hear you right?
That's very correct. In a nutshell, that's what we do. That's our business thesis.
Okay. And then you also mentioned that as part of that, okay, so the legal, you mentioned that you started like a law firm, right? Is that Mauritius? Did you say Mauritius?
No, so we have a law firm that has operations in the US,
Okay.
right? Nigeria,
Mm.
right? And we're setting up in Kenya
In
as
Kenya. Okay.
well.
Okay.
And that's really just to ensure that we're able to deliver legal services without restriction,
Mm.
right, to our clients.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. For the
Okay.
Mauritius, it's a very tailored or nuanced kind of business
Okay.
or service that is required for private equity firms and venture
Mm.
capital firms.
Mm.
It's called fund administration. It's
Okay.
really just accounting support, helping to
Mm.
compute net asset value of their fund.
Mm.
Accounting support, which is a requirement when you have institutional investors in
Mm.
your fund.
Mm. So brilliant. Thanks a lot for clarifying that, right? So I want us to kind of take all of that apart, if you don't mind. Now, and I know you back in the day, we were in the university about the same time. And, I know you left, you went to school, and then you travel abroad, did some, programs and all of that. But can you tell us about what your journey has been like from a career person, right? And to an extent, I think you're still a career person. And then how this entrepreneurial side kind of, evolve, right? How did it happen that, okay, even from doing something that is, we will call a core career kind of thing, you're able to, find an opportunity and you start something that is even like on the back of that, but different from it in a sense. How has that been? if you can just talk us through that journey, it would be great.
Okay, so thank you so much for that. I'll walk you through my journey, right? I think I studied law, but I always knew that I wanted to operate in the business space. I knew before I graduated, I knew I wasn't going to do litigation. I was in court wearing my wig and gown just once in my life, right? And it was because my principal at the time just said, "Muji, just go and get a date," right? So I knew I wasn't going to do that. I did my NYSC. I started off in even pre NYSC. I started off with a commercial law firm, a non courtroom law firm. They don't provide legal litigation services, and so I was exposed to contracting, commercial law, and finance and what have you. And I just continued in that regard, right? And then somewhere, I think around maybe when I was 7, 8 years at the bar, I was a senior associate at Templars. I was doing quite well. I was very happy. And I just felt that I needed to take a break, right? But the break was each time I tell people that I took a career break and decided to come and do my master's, people laugh and say, I'm not sure that's a break. But I just knew that I just wanted a break. I just wanted a break. And I knew that that break was not typically right. It's when you work in big law firms, that's what we call it. It's the hours are demanding, right? So it's not uncommon for people to then say that, oh, they want to move in-house as a general counsel or a counsel within a legal department, right? Because unlike law firm where you have several clients, now you have just one client. Your hours are, you still do a lot of work depending on the industry, but at least your 9 to 5 is guaranteed versus at times getting over at
Moving
12
to client
midnight.
side. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
right. I knew I wanted a break, but I also knew that that was not the break. I wasn't very keen on moving in house. I was in the energy and project finance practice at Templars. I'm being detailed because I want people to also understand yourself and understand that the fact that people do things naturally doesn't necessarily mean that you have to do things, you have to follow that part, right? So I was in the energy and project finance doing a lot of oil and gas and power transactions. There were a lot of on-grid power projects. One that was one instrumental, right, was Azura projects, which I had worked on, right? Very good. I had a fulfilling career, but I just knew that I needed a break. And that break wasn't for me to move in house. In fact, incidentally, someone had reached out to me to say that I think one of the IOCs, I can't remember, was recruiting, right? And if I was interested, but I think it was a contract or a consultancy position. And for whatever reason, I didn't feel an urge to apply. That is a position that anybody will jump at. Like an IOC is recruiting, and typically they recruit from these big law firms. They're looking for an oil and gas lawyer, and I wasn't excited. I can't remember which one was it, whether it was Shell or whatever. But for whatever reason, I never sent my resume to the person that reached out, which was actually a client, and it got me thinking. So I took some time out to say, okay, you know what? I want to pray, right? I feel a bit of uneasiness and what have you. What do I need to do? And I got the lead in that it was time to go get my master's, right? And I applied to a few schools, a few top schools. Even the journey to getting into Harvard, it was just God. It was divine because I missed each time. I like to tell this story. I missed the deadline because I was so busy. We were working on a very big transaction. The transaction I had mentioned, we're working with an international counsel, a UK counsel. Typically, they come into Nigeria to lead the transaction and then we support. And the lead counsel emailed us that for some reason he couldn't make it, which meant that we had to lead. And so I had a lot of work to do because what it meant was that we're leading negotiations with, I think, Shell or Chevron, or thereabout, right? And I think I had submitted my applications up to a certain point, but my personal statement that weekend, I was to write my personal statement. I just didn't have the time. I focused on my work. I'm intentionally saying this because I want people to learn, young people to learn from these, that when you treat other people's work like your work, the stars line up for you in future. You may think that you're doing yourself a disservice, right? But when you then decide to set up your firm, you would also find very good people because you have sown that seed. It didn't make sense that I missed a deadline. In fact, I remember my friend who had said, "Hey, Moji, what's up with your applications and all of that?" My colleague, and he said, I missed Harvard deadline because I couldn't finish my personal statement. And it unglashed me and said, "No, nobody does that. You need to prioritize yourself." And I said, "Look, I'm applying to other schools, Stanford, NYU, and what have you. Guess what? This has never been done." A month after, Harvard emailed me. This is very true. My classmates had gone to Harvard a few years before me. When I told him this story, he said it is not possible. They emailed me to say, "We noticed that you started your application, you had reached about maybe 80%, because obviously you submit a lot of things, recommendations, but you did not complete it. We're giving you," I think they gave me 3 days or 4 days extra to complete it. And I knew that that was God. So I quit. I wasn't going to miss that second opportunity. So I did what I had to do. I submitted it. And then few months after, the application started rolling in, the decision started rolling in. And I think pretty much I got into all the schools that I applied to. I even felt that I wasted my application fees, but thankfully the naira, the value of the naira was still very good. So I was able to pay the $100 or $120, right, to all these schools. And eventually there were a few decisions and all of that. Eventually I settled for. We looked at all the funding and all of that. Some gave you a full ride and all that. We eventually settled for Harvard. After Harvard, I joined Schwartz LLC, which was a boutique private equity firm. And I was just, we do. There's a 1 year postgraduate work authorization, and I had said I wasn't very keen on staying back in the US, but I was open. And I said, you know what? There's a 1 year postgraduate work authorization that comes with a master's. It will be great to at least just use it to get experience, exposure, and then when I go back, it would always be beneficial. So I joined a boutique small private equity firm called Schwartz Edge. They support hedge funds and what have you. And about 6 months into it, I met the founder and CEO of Kuramo Capital, Mr. Wale Adeosun, Nigerian. He's worked in corporate America for about 30 years. And then he decided, maybe, yeah, about, yeah, 25, 30 years. And then he had decided to set up Kuramo Capital offices in Lagos, Nigeria. I'd never heard of Kuramo Capital before then, even though a few people knew them. And the story, I met him and he was like, "Hey, what are you doing? Hey, come, you're the kind of people we're looking for. Come use your skills to to work for the continent, right?" Because what Kuramo Capital does is they they invest on the continent, but the investors are institutional investors, right? So it made sense to have the back office operations in the New York office, right? Investor relations, legal, but the core investment teams, right? They sit in Lagos and Nairobi. And so it would just be helpful to just have someone who has worked on deals, transactions in on the continent, and you also have a Pan-African or sub-Saharan. You've worked on deals that you had to work with. So that was my story, and I worked there for. I mean, if you count it, maybe
So did
seven
you move
years.
back home, or
I
you were
didn't. I
working?
didn't have to move back, and that
Okay.
was the unique thing about the job. I didn't have to move back because they have offices in Lagos, Nairobi, and New York.
New York.
Yeah. So I was in the New York office because the New York office, that's where the back office operations sits: finance, legal, investor relations, HR, but the core investment function, which is kind of the business side, the
Yeah.
business,
Yeah.
right? The business, is like sales team, if it was manufacturing, for instance, and they have to be there because we
Closer to
invest in
market.
the continent. You need to know the companies you're going to invest in,
Yeah.
right? You need the guys who are going to take the decision have to be
Closer to
there.
the
So
market.
that's the way. But I get
Yeah.
to travel to the continent a lot by virtue of my work, right? Now, the structure of the business is such that we don't just invest in companies; we also invest in fund managers. That is, companies that or firms. I know that
I
people who
provide
are not in the
funding for
industry,
entrepreneurs.
firms who
Yeah.
also give. Do you
Funds to
understand? So we
entrepreneurs.
have a
Yeah.
fund of fund strategy,
Yeah.
right? And we also have a direct strategy whereby there's a pool of capital that goes directly to companies, but there's also a pool that goes to funds that
Funders.
also then
Yeah.
go ahead, right? And then in the course of that, we've had instances where we need to support the funds, right, to help them also get capital, access to capital, right? And so our CEO being a visionary person, in fact, one one thing that Kuramo Capital has successfully done is to accelerate local capital, sorry, foreign capital into the continent. So before Kuramo Capital came on board, there were only two or three indigenous private equity firms. But post Kuramo, there are over 10, 30 or 20 indigenous private equity firms, right? And when we say indigenous, that is only owned by Africans, managing capital in excess of $100 million, right? And investing. And so what Kuramo Capital has been able to do is identify these managers, right? Also give them access to investors, our investors, order access to other investors, just walk with them through the journey to help them to succeed. You don't want to be the only person that is writing a check in a in an Africa focused firm. You want them to, you want it to be you want them to be larger, right? So at some point there were few managers that the firm provided mentorship to in their early days. They've grown now, mentorship, guidance, access, and our CEO always said it back then, and I use R, right, because I'm still part of the ecosystem, right? That's why I use R. He says that we can't commercial. There's no reason why we can't commercialize that aspect of the business, right? But we couldn't, right? Because you can't be seen to be giving money to someone and you're taking money from them for helping them, right? So at a point in my life, I believe 20 towards the end of 2024. Okay, so 2022, I went on mat leave. 2023, I came back to the office, and again, I had that. I would say, is it my inflection point again? Another one, the same one.
That I need a break moment again.
Yes, yes, but because for me, it was okay. I've done, I think by then I had done maybe 5 years or so. And what next? All right. I was happy. I believe I was getting paid well, even by New York standard.
I'm
But
not
I
going to
said
ask
there's
question on
more.
that. Don't worry, it's fine.
Yeah. And, and I was like, okay, what next? Right. But I still wanted to do what I was doing. So I had my moments again. And it got me thinking, right? The next, and the question was, do I go and work for a bigger organization, right? The big names, JP Morgan. And a few people have asked me, okay, you're in the US, why are you not working in the big banks? You know, the kind of the names JP Morgan, this and that, and or leverage the experience you have from Kuramo to go and work in a global private equity firm, which is not um, a bad career path in and of itself, not bad. But I would say that the work I was doing, or I am, and I'm still doing, right? I find it is very impactful. The fact that you can see that you can advise on a transaction from at times as early as ideation stage, and you see it come to life. But more importantly, you're sitting in the US, but your skills, your knowledge, it's you're seeing the direct impact on your
Mm,
people,
mm,
right?
mm.
On your, I mean, it just has
A ring to it, like it's
there's
kind
just
of
there's just
fulfilling.
meaning. It's
Yeah.
fulfilling. It's and I don't think that I have a job that a lot of people have, because how many people have, I mean, until post COVID, where
Mm,
you can work remotely, global roles and
mm,
what have you, you're sitting anywhere in the world and you're still
mm,
doing your work in. I mean,
mm,
that was not common, right?
mm,
Where you had a job that hired you as
mm,
an African, right? Because
mm,
of the skills you have as an African, but
mm,
you're sitting in another continent and you are able to. And by the way, I'm also a New York board as
mm,
well, right?
mm,
So the fact that I have a bar license in New York,
mm,
I'm so it was just so that was something I didn't want to lose.
mm, mm,
At the same time, I knew that I had built um, a level of credibility,
mm,
loyalty, that,
mm,
and the question was, am I going, I had a baby,
mm,
am I going to go and start grinding again? At what
mm,
age,
mm,
right? To prove myself.
mm,
I had gotten to the point where I was no longer, if I say, okay, I had my team,
mm.
I wasn't ready to go and prove myself as a black girl that doesn't have an American
Career person,
accent
yeah.
in a white
And people don't know how big a factor that is.
dominated
But go on.
environment, right?
Mm,
Unfortunately, that is the reality at times. So
yeah.
I knew that reality, and I said
Mm,
to myself that I don't think that was the way to go.
mm,
So in 2024, I approached our CEO and the partner that I work with directly, which is our COO. And I said, this thing that you've always talked about, right? Institutionalizing that guidance, that mentorship, that
mm.
access, right? I think I'm ready. I want to do it, right?
But you hold up for 1 second before you get into that, right? Because we really need to spend time listening to that pivot, right, and how you navigated that transition. But before you get into that, I'm quite conscious of the fact that there may be one, two, three, four people, right, on our timeline that will listen to this interview, and they are at an inflection point from a funding standpoint, right? They want to they have these ideas they've been nursing, they have this thing they've been building, and they feel like, oh, I need funding is the only thing holding me back, and all of that, right? I'm just wondering, today we have a funder in the house, so to say, right? Someone who funds or who knows the ecosystem like the back of her hand, right? um if you from a profiling standpoint, right, is there a ceiling or a barrier in terms of to entry in the kind of people, in the kind of businesses that you work with, right? When you look at the business and you see the potential, what determines, how do you sort that out? I guess that's a roundabout way of me asking that. Is there a particular criteria you look at, right, in deciding which business to fund and which not to fund, right, back in the day. And then so that maybe, who knows, one or two people that may want to bring business to you can reach out and say, okay, I have this thing and it's big enough. I think we can do something together. Does that make sense? And then after that, we'll get into that, that pivot.
Yes. So
Okay.
let me walk you through the typical funding stages for an
Mm,
entrepreneur, right? So I've been saying private equity, venture capital, right? Most times that's really private equity is really for growth stage companies, not you're not at ideation. At ideation stage, you're probably doing your seed, yeah. After your ideation and maybe you've validated it. So the first funding stage or
mm,
capital raising stage
mm.
is friends and family round.
Yeah.
Because even an angel investor like myself, if you've not been able to raise money, like, and I'm talking as an angel investor, if you were just to approach me, not an institutional investor, if your idea has not been validated, right? If you've not been able to raise money within your close circle, why should I give you money? Either, and it could be close circle, could even be a mentor, a why should I give you money, right? I want to see that you have put in your money, right? Friends and family have put in their money. What have you done with that money, right? And then you now need another capital, right, to scale, or at least to validate the vision better. So that's stage two. So at stage two, you might be reaching out to an angel investor network. There are several. There is ABAN, African Business, they number, right? If you're able to get money from that group, right? Again, and you are able to use to scale, right? That's also good. Then stage three is you could then start reaching out to venture capitals, right? That's how Silicon Valley got popular and what have you, right? You go for pitches, you win, you start accessing institutional capital. But these are institutional investors that, so at that point you are not yet um you're still an early stage business. Um, your idea has been validated and proven. You have a customer base already. Maybe you need more infrastructure in order to scale. But your business is too small for a private equity firm like the people I advise deal with, because some write checks of $5 million minimum, right? You can then go to venture capital, VC, that's what it's called. Depending on your thesis and their funding thesis, and depending on their needs, some write checks of 100K, 200K, some 500K, depending on the stage of the business, right? When you've now received capital from those guys, you've also scaled. You may or may not need to come to us, right? But it is at that stage you're now coming to the PE firms who are writing checks of 5 million, 2 million, 3 million. But in a nutshell, right, that is how to approach um, capital raising.
And that's super helpful, right? Especially to a lot of entrepreneurs who are going to see this, right? It's not just about, you know um conceiving ideas and then start looking for people who can, put money into that. I think, to your point, is first of all about, okay, you've conceived that ideas and you've validated it to an extent, and then to what extent, how much of skin have you put into this game, right? How much of your skin is involved, your family, friends, and as somebody said it on adventures in the past, family, friends, and fools, right? How much of that have you been able to kind of bring together, right? And to what extent have you used that? Have you judiciously kind of, use that resource? Then you can then begin to think of, like venture capital and all of that. I think that, putting it like that, I think it's kind of makes it kind of clearer, right? My challenge and question to you would be that, do people beyond the family, friends, and fools, right? Do businesses really go through that, like venture, from venture capitals to private equity and on and on and on like that. Well, but there are possibilities of, even going faster because you've been able to do a whole lot, or depending on the size of what you are able to raise from family, friends, and foes. Do you get what I mean?
No, that's a great question. Because you're right, you don't have to go through that traditional route, especially if you are building something very big. And it also depends on who is the person that is running the business, right? We've funded a business where the CEO of a big company, a listed company, left to go and set up the same thing that he was doing, right? He had built that business that he was leading. He had built that business successfully. He knows the market in and out, right? He has the industry network, right? Put in his money, he started something. So you can do that. But in order for you to cross that or um avoid the steps, right? You should have a level of industry credibility. You should have deep market networks. And that's why when young people come to me, right, to ask, to say, oh, do I need some level of experience before I go and settle? Or can I, if I know that business, this is what I want to do, can I just finish as a graduate, work for a year, work for 2 years, and then just go and set up? No, there's no point wasting my time with an employer. I don't believe in that story. I
Mm.
don't believe in that um in that
In that approach.
trajectory, right?
Yeah.
Because it can work for some if you are from money,
Mm.
whether big, whether old or new money,
Yeah.
right? And you have a network that you can access through your family. But if you don't have that, and you want to work for 2 3 years, of course subject to the kind of business that you are doing. But if you're going to kind of need institutional capital in order to scale, right? um Industry credibility, even your skills, your knowledge, your experience is part of what people consider to give you money. Can you run a business? Have you led a team? Have you, how do we know that this? So those are some of the considerations to bear in mind.
I mean, Muji, thanks a lot for sharing that. That and I really hope and wish someone will pick up all these things, right, and really get a lot of value from it. Because I guess the biggest mistake that young career people make, especially people who want to start a business, right? Uh, who have a vision of starting a business and they feel like, okay, do I really need to work? I guess the mistake that they make most of the time is in thinking that people work basically to earn, right? To earn a living, to get. One of the things I've learned over the years is when you work anywhere, right? There are three things you're working for. And to be honest, money is at the bottom of the ladder. Money is important. Don't get me wrong, right? We have families and kids to feed and the society to impact. Money is important, but money is at the bottom. I think what comes first are the experiences you earn on one hand, and number two, the people you connect with, the network you build, and then after that, money. So even if the money is very good, and you're not learning or you're not building a solid network of friends and colleagues, I think to a large extent, I think it's a waste. But this is about you, not me. Um, let's come back to you. So you are saying that, yeah, you had that moment again, and you're like, okay, I think I need a transition. So you went to your partner. How did that conversation go?
It was welcome, very very welcome, right? It was received very well because remember I said that it's a vision that our founding partner at Kuramo always had, right? He's an entrepreneur. He's built a lot of entrepreneurs. He's made CEOs of companies, right? So hearing that I wanted to make the pivots, it was received with joy. And I received their blessings fully. And that brings me to the industry credibility, building your network, and what have you, right? So I received their blessings. What it meant was that even though we were transitioning, and he then said, okay, so the lead partner, who is a person I was working directly with, said, look, it makes sense for you to partner with then our finance manager at Kuramo Capital, because the suite of services there you can offer complementary services. It helps scalability, and it just makes the service offering more compelling. And so I spoke to him about it, and he said, sure, why not? And we've worked together anyway. So you can also see that even getting your team, right? Because chemistry is very, very important, right? And that's why, just to add to what you were saying about you are not just earning money, but you're earning experience, your network. Network does is not limited to customers. Is also That's also where you find business partners. That's where you also find team members to hire, right? If I had started on my own day one, right, getting a business partner, getting a team. So what it meant was that my previous employer then outsourced or spun off its back office function, because that was a product we wanted to sell. And in order for that for the story and the thesis to be compelling, right, we needed to show that a
Proof of
big
concept that this is working.
what other backing do you need?
Mm.
So that is the concept. You can then go to the market to say, this is this, right? So I would
And,
still say I'm fractional
mm,
GC, General Counsel
mm,
of Kuramo,
mm.
but I'm also fractional GC to,
A couple of other
yeah, we're still new.
outfits.
Or,
Mm,
and you know, the interesting thing, we incorporated, you know, the timeline between the time we incorporate and eventually when we incorporated the company in December 2024.
mm,
And in less than 6 months, we actually got to tell you that, because we knew the market,
mm,
right? We knew that there was a need. We could see
mm.
we're investors, so
Yeah.
we could see the problem firsthand,
Mm,
right?
mm,
And a major investor, Mastercard Foundation, they
mm,
manage they have billions of dollars
mm,
that they
mm,
are managing.
mm,
They heard about it and they were like, oh, fantastic. We have this Mastercard Africa Growth Fund. We've
mm,
had this whereby we're supporting first time managers,
mm,
right? First time female fund managers. They heard about it that, okay, they need the support,
mm.
right? These first time female fund managers, this is because they are also an investor. Investors know what the problem is.
Yeah.
So in less than 6 months of actually setting up, we got that
Wow.
business
Mm,
to
wow.
help to support fund managers.
Mm.
And again, what other proof of concept do you need again? That what you are actually that the problem you are actually solving for, it's a real one. It
Mm,
exists.
mm,
And again, that's also a business that maybe I wouldn't have. I mean,
mm,
how do you set up a company and in 6 months, right? Mastercard Foundation, contracting through media, for instance, you've
mm,
gotten. So that has been the journey,
mm,
right? So ability to scale as a business, ability
mm.
to expand your market access.
Yeah.
It's easier,
Mm.
right? Obviously, we still have to do the work as an entrepreneur.
Yes, you still have to do the work, right? The door can be open for you, but you have to walk through it, right? And you have to find a way to keep it open. And you don't do that by just speaking great English. You do that by delivering value, such that they continue to to bring you back and bring you back. Right. And for me, I'm personally excited to to hear all that you've been able to build, right, and how things kind of line up for you. But I'm a bit curious about, so I want to get into the nitty gritty of what you currently do now in terms of the the services you offer and all of that, and let's get into the details of scale of operations. And thankfully you've mentioned Mastercard Foundation and all of that. But before we do that, I just want to I want to double click a little bit into what your relationship and what your you know you know your relationship first with your partner and with the founder and the CEO was like, and is still like. What level of confidence were you able to build to that point that they felt like they felt like there is an opportunity there and you're the one for it? It could have been, yeah, there is an opportunity there, but not you, right? We've not seen enough to, do you get what I mean? But they were like, there is an opportunity and go for it, right? Because it's not just about, I don't think it's just about finding someone to take something off or to bring it to life, right? It's about finding the right person, right? Because the thing, as a matter of fact, the woo is even more important than the thing itself. Do you get what I mean? If you don't get the woo right, the thing will be frustrated. It's just a matter of time, right? So w- how did you, because I think a lot of people would get value from this, especially people who are working somewhere and working for people before thinking of going out to start something. How did you get to that point where you're able to generate so much confidence, right? You're able to build so much credibility to the point that you can say you're the right person for this. We'll give you all of the backing. Do you get what I mean? What are those things that you can share with our viewers? Possibly those who are still working somewhere or still grinding a 9 to 5 here and there, and they wants to do, what can you share with them from the way you've related and you've worked and you've done the things that you've done that they can take away?
Okay, I would say that in a nutshell, you're saying as an employee, how can you demonstrate entrepreneurial skills such that the owners of the business, they can identify you as a potential partner in their business, right? What can differentiate you, or what are the differentiating factors, right, from someone who is just a regular employee, grow, manage, but you can be noticed by the owners of the business as someone who can potentially be a part owner. Because I think that that's what it is, right? Because what it means is that I could have been a partner and an equity partner in the business. There are a number of things I would say. I would say that first and foremost, an employee contributes to outcome, whereas a leader or someone or an employee, someone who is entrepreneurial, has a foundational mindset, a founder's mindset. And what does that mean, right? You take ownership for success or failures, you go above and beyond, right? Above and beyond means that you are building systems, you are improving processes, you are improving culture. You are not necessarily just contributing as an implementer, right? You you're strategic, right, in your approach, and you can say that I could also be strategic in my approach. And all I just want to be is, I just want to be, I just want to rise to the pinnacle of my career, retired, and all of that. I think it will be the main differentiator will be an ownership and execution mindset, right? I believe owners of a business can see firsthand who thinks, someone who approaches a problem from an owner perspective, or someone who appreciate a problem from an execution perspective. An employee would execute on something from an how do we build, right? And then leave it to say, okay, XYZ. An entrepreneur goes, I'm trying, I don't want to personalize it because I guess the question you asked me, they are best placed to answer what it is that is different from why did they choose to support me, right? But I'm just trying to say, okay, what are some of the skills or things that I must have exhibited or that anyone can exhibit to just make that person that's just an owner. You just need to show that you own the business. There are times when I think I've seen someone write about me in the organization and they've said that I'm very loyal, that my loyalty level, right? Again, whatever it is they've seen, I don't know. But there are times when I've prayed for the success of as an employee, right? And and I remember this was years ago. I remember talking to a colleague and was like, I would have to pray about it. And the person looked at me like, hey, those of you that not like as though it was something like I'm not an owner in the business. What's my if he fails, fine. If he doesn't, right? And that's why I said it earlier that when you take a business as though it's yours, the stars line up for you somehow, right? So I just believe that if you do a business in a nutshell, if you do a business or if you do your work as though it is yours, whatever that means for you, that is, if this was my business, there are times when and it's not just about the time that you put into the business. I'll try to personalize it. In my early days, right, there are times when I've been in the office till 11, because we had to deliver on a task, right? Um, and then someone could say that, well, that's not a big deal if people work hard. Um, but then again, when there are issues, the way you also resolve it. And one thing people do is when you are part of a team and you kind of segregate yourself that, oh, it's them, is their business, or the kind of decisions that they take, and all of that. If you take a we approach early on as an employee, a we, right, come up to say, oh, I don't think maybe we should do it this way and all of that. They pick those things. I'll just say that do the work as though it's where to be yours. The way you would run it as though it's yours. I think that's that in a nutshell. That's that because I can't. They would have to. They would have to tell
Tell you, yeah, I understand. I
exactly.
understand. I
I can, but
understand.
I will just say okay. Maybe the things I did from a skill perspective, how I approach my
Mm,
work, ownership, and
mm,
all that.
mm.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot for sharing that. I found that quite helpful, to be honest. Right? I know that it looks like you're trying to pick one, two, three, four things, like, but I think the whole ownership thing kind of rings true and kind of comes through like the main thing because I've seen a lot of skillful people, super skillful people who are not very loyal or who are very, who are dubious, who you can't trust with things because they don't have problem with, they are so skillful they can play with numbers, right? If you know creative accounting and all the works around that, okay, they are skillful, right? But there is something about owning things and being loyal, right, and being true to the business, and I think that kind of comes true, right? So I hope people, pick that and they're able to, take one or two learning from that.
And let me just say something real quick. A thought just came to my mind. Right. One easy way to also identify or spot this, because I assume that there would also be senior people here who are trying to identify potential partners from their team members, right? Does this person does this person see their work, right, as an extension of their identity, or is their job just part of their career? When you see what you do as an extension of your identity, the brand, you're very mindful of the brand of the business. You're very, because you now see it as it is part of me. It's not just, oh, my career, it's my work. And it plays out a lot on, you are able to pick it from how they approach issues, from how they solve problems. That way you can easily, okay, this person, how they solve problems in the organization, how they manage, right? If you're very, even how you manage people, if you manage your team members in a way that you don't want people to work away and have this perception as about the business, because you know that what you're doing, you are creating an identity for the business. If you think from the business mindset and not necessarily, this is just my career, this is just work, it's a lot to ask for, and it's not out of place for someone, and I'll be very honest, for someone to say, no, that's my career, once I get home, work is work. And there are times when I've been asked to join calls at short notice on a Saturday because something happened somewhere and we needed to do a quick, right? And you can tell between someone who would join it, who is joining willfully and sees that, oh, this is our issue that needs to be addressed, versus, okay, you can spot that. Ultimately, I hope it's easier when you're doing a work that you find impactful, and not everybody has that kind of job, right? Or have that kind of career. So um
I think
just
that I think
yeah.
that's a very good point you just made. Like you, that you just close to it, right? Finding that alignment between what is important to you and what the business is trying to deliver, right? And I remember back in my, one of my old organizations I work with, they used to ask a question around, is the job, is your role helping you to do something meaningful, right? Are you doing a meaningful job, or is just a waste of your time? You're just doing it because you have no choice, you have to feed the family and all of that. And if that meaning element is not there, maybe it's something that is up for conversation, right? Because after a while you will basically burn out, or you just lose interest and you lose start looking for something else. And I think that's a very good point you just raised, right? So thanks a lot for sharing that. Now, I quickly want to step back a little bit, right? Again, in that transition, I'm particularly interested in that middle, that not always very tidy middle, the messy middle, right? When I speak with entrepreneurs, right, they are always, motivated, driven, and all of that. And at times, the vision they see, kind of make them oblivious of the risk of failure, right? If this thing fails, right, what happens to me? What happens to my career? What happens to my family? What happens to my finance? What happens to all those kind of stuff, right? For you, was that a similar experience? Was that the kind of experience you had, right, going into these? Was it like, did you have that fear of, hey, this is great, I think I can do this, I don't think this will fail? Or did you have that, trepidation of, hey, what if this doesn't work out? What if, did you have doubts, right? Did you have concerns? How did you navigate the emotions around all of those kind of things, like moving from, sure, salary, to a point where you are now the CEO, and to a large extent things depends on how much of business you're able to bring in. And then even much more important is, now if it's just about you or your partner, it's a different thing, but now you're responsible for people's salaries, right, and people's earnings. And what if, do you understand, money doesn't come in? What do I tell these people? How did you manage those kind of, if you had those fears, did you have them? Number one, if you had them, how did you navigate that? And if you didn't have them, what was it like for you emotionally making that transition?
Oh, thank you very much. I think the decision, it's a good question, and I'll answer it honestly. I would say that in the early days, I had uh, the initial fears, but it didn't take me so long to overcome. I believe that by the time I was having the conversation, I had I had a level of confidence that I wanted to do it. But to even walk up to my then manager, right, my colleague who is co-owner of the business at the Kuramo level before, not the CEO now, this Kamal Palan, right? I had put in a lot of, and I'm grateful for family members who helped me in taking that decision, right? The fears were there. But what eventually helped me to cross the line was I think I have a quite an attractive resume. If it fails, I'll go back to the market. And if I go back to the market, nobody will blame me for trying. If anything, that's knowledge, right, would even be valuable at that level. But how did I even get there, right? I had looked at, I had played out different scenarios. So what I just told you is the very worst scenario. The decision was easy because of my situation. It meant that from day one, I had a client, which is very unusual for a lot of people. And not just a client, I had a big client. The only difference was that I need to go and get more businesses because I was no longer, I and my team members, because I was acquiring team members because the that entire division was spun off, right? So I actually did some things. I didn't it wasn't a decision that I took. I did some things, right, in terms of okay, adjustments. Okay, they're a big employer, they are paying this. Can we actually pay this, right? One very easy decision, for instance, very easy decision was that they offer an international health insurance plan, irrespective of that, gives you access to private health care everywhere in the world except the US. And I just knew that I'm sorry, I can't do that as a business, right? So identifying that, okay, this is the reality, this is the scenario one, scenario two, scenario three, right? It helps. And that's why, again, you can't take away the place of experience, right? Having to work for some time. Because what it also means is I also have financial leverage, right? Because if it doesn't work, it doesn't mean that, or if it does, or if there are challenges along the way from a business pipeline perspective, right? Do we have, can we still at least cover the team's salary? Can we still do that, right? Can we, I believe my business partner and I, we can still live for, a couple of, you know, yeah, without it. So it helped to make, it helped the decision making process, right? So, and then you've been doing this for a while as well. So the question then is, so you had it was also a transition. There's a transition, right? So it made it, because of the unique nature, right? It helps the decision, but it's not without its challenges and that fear as well. But that was what helped me to.
I mean, thanks a lot, Moji, for sharing that. As they say, to whom much is given, much is expected, right? And for you, you didn't start entrepreneurship like every other person, right? So to an extent, there is like a higher level of expectation from society or from wherever that you can only build on this, right? So You get what I mean? So for you, it's the realities are a bit different. Yes, maybe you had a little bit of leverage, but the expectations are also higher because you came in with some assets, quite all right, but you also came in with some liabilities and you had to make some tough calls, right? My next question is around the tough calls. So you had to kind of streamline some of the things that you probably offer as an employer of choice, right? And all of those kind of stuff. Probably look into the benefits and the compensations and the career opportunities that are available to people, and all of that had to be relooked technically. And I'm wondering um if there were fallout as a result of that, right? Did you lose people, and how did you tell me about it?
No, very great question, right? Because what it meant was you were asking people to leave a brand, a big brand, to a company, Salt Advisory, that was formed when? Last year, yesterday, to work for who? Moji Fashola versus me working for Wale Adeosun and his business partners who are in their 50s and 60s, right? Corporate America, if you Google their name and all of that, there was that resistance. And we found that to be very okay because we wanted to work with people who believe in the vision and the mission. If you truly believe in what we are building, right, you'll be able to go the extra mile. The way you will do the work is going to be different. So the truth of the matter is that was totally fine. We didn't want to work with anyone who saw us as, oh, these small people, or I'll prefer to have this resume on my brand. Those questions were there, even for the people who eventually moved. Not directly in that way, but just helping to there were questions. Oh, for instance, oh, my annual leave, what does this mean for me? What we address. So as much as possible, we try to ensure that everything we were doing, in the case of, I think we tried for the employees who were moving, we tried to ensure that their benefits stayed the same to the extent possible. It's just new hires that are coming in. But in terms of um um employee benefits, for instance, leave days, for the number of things, how we work, how we do business, we needed to maintain that because it's not fair on people for you to just come and then they get lower. But of course, there were certain things that we tried. I don't want to share too much information. There were just certain things that we needed to make adjustments on, which weren't so. It wasn't a big deal, really, if you truly believed in you what we're trying to build. And again, it's a function of what your goals are, right? Because if you're someone who sees, if you're entrepreneurial, right, where you see yourself as, okay, you know what, this thing could potentially be big. And if I am part of the team who built this, then, and if you notice, if you can see that these people have this backing, they started out this way, they are very likely to explode. Right? So do I want to be part of it now? If it fails and I can build with them, grow, and be the next set of leaders, or I'm not really in this. I'm an employer, I'm an employee. And so I want to work in a big corporate. I want to move from this, jump from this to this, another company. So it depends on, or do you have an entrepreneurial mindset that if I can see how a company is built from scratch to, I will be able to replicate that. So again, right? And I would tell people, be true to yourself. Identify who you are, what you want out of life, out of your career, so that you don't be an impediment to a team, right? You don't impact the chemistry of the team. So it was very okay. Yes, where we had, people, oh, very fine, oh well and good, bye bye. And the people who were Oh, fantastic. Right. And we're very grateful for the success that we have. We're able to pull um we're able to pull more or less very strong talents from even big organizations in different, right. It takes a lot at that level. You're just starting out, so you even finding young people who believe, who can see, and that's who can see the vision, who can see the long-term impact, that I can leave a big name. I have someone on my team who left one of the top three law firms in Nigeria come and join us. It's about seeing the vision. Yes, it's about seeing the vision. So we're not doing badly from our ability to attract from a benefit and compensation, but also identifying people who, I mean, money points and all these unicorns. They didn't start off being that. You needed to have certain people who believe, because I'm sure they were able to pull people from big industries, big names. So it's just about chemistry, team chemistry, and and that is the best way to identify true people, the real guys who are committed to your vision. So
I have the right chemistry. Oh, come on, I am you.
ah,
I will move to the US now, now, now.
no, no, no. Will you move to? We operating for now. Our
I will show up, pam, like that. Now, thanks a lot, Mojo, for sharing that. And I know that there can be, you know, pains, right, in when it has to do with people, right? Some of them can just people are just people, right? So don't let's get into all of the details. People can be people, and it can get quite painful. My next question is still, to an extent, I think is still um around people. But before we do that, I want to so if you look at the business from when you started it, and I know that you have your like the business that you kind of transitioned with, right, which was good. Um and then Mastercard came on, Mastercard Foundation came on. Now, can you give us a rough number in terms of your client base now, and then maybe employees, and just a rough number, or a ballpark of some sort. So,
yeah, I don't think we have up to 15 clients. We don't have up
mm,
to 15 clients, and we don't have up to 15 team members.
hmm.
But we service very quality clients,
That's a very
and our team members, we're very proud of the team that we have and the team we're building, where we
mm,
we have some of the best skilled,
people. Mm,
but the real, what we really pride ourselves in is not just the skill, but just people. It's an A team, people who do
mm,
things excellently and
mm.
believe that things should be done at a global standard.
Yeah, yeah. When you started saying that, I can see that you've delivered that pitch like several times. I can imagine you on a Monday morning, right? That this is who we are, this is how we operate. Like, you've done it like him, and then when you were going to get into that, you basically just switch into that your CEO mode, and just basically just delivered it with the same passion, right? With the same, which is great anyway. I mean, not complaining, right? But it's good to see you, for that 1 minute where your CEO had. Now, I asked that question around, and thanks for sharing the stuff around, the number of clients. And again, I like the fact that you call out, it's not so much in the size of the client base, right? We always want to grow our client base, that's good, but it's not in the size, it's not in the number, it's in the quality, right? And I'm sure that if I ask you to start double clicking into examples, you've given us one already, and if we continue to expand that, I'm sure people will be like, that's, even that 15 is a lot, right? Because do you get what I mean? Because these names you're calling, right, to manage them, because their expectations will be high. They are, what their requirement will be up there, and all of that can be quite a handful. So thanks for sharing that. Now, I just want to circle back to the conversation around people. Now, 15 people may not sound like a lot of people, but it is quite, for a small business that started
Not
less
up to
than
15. We're not up to
no, no,
15.
well,
We're not up to. So
I'll
I
take
don't have 15 staff here, but not up to 15. We're a very small team.
yeah. So I'll take 15 as a benchmark. I'll take 14 as a benchmark, right? For a business who has not, that started just a couple of years ago, right? That is, you know, um, that is something, right? And I'm just tempted to check into your. So I've been privileged to work for a lot of multinationals, a few, right? Multinationals, and highly skilled people are always very choiceful about your culture. They're always very choiceful about your people practices, so to say, right? Now, when you mentioned that, very skilled people from here and from there are, they saw what you're building and they've come to kind of partner with you or to join the team, I'm sure that they saw beyond the vision, right? If you are a if you're a bad boss, for instance, if you make their life hell, right? A lot of those people, I'm sure, would have left, irrespective of the vision that you paint or you try to build or you try to, articulate for them, right? So it's the vision is great. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying that there are other things you're doing in terms of people practices, right? That I'm sure that is helping you to attract and retain top talent. And I don't know if you're, fine to share a little bit of that, right? Number one, how do you even identify the right talent to be sure that the people you're bringing in are the right fit for your organization? And then when you're able to attract them and bring them in, how do you keep them? How do you retain them? How do you keep them motivated, right? Beyond compensation and benefit. I hope that is a clear question.
Yeah, that's very helpful. Okay, so there was someone we hired. We don't have a lot of staff. I think saying 15 is even saying yeah, saying 15 is even making it. We have less than 10 full-time hires, right? But we also have people who work in a consulting capacity for us as consultants. We split maybe their time, maybe they spend 50% of their time, right? So that's another way as a business, right? That's another way to sort of manage cost at the beginning and also access quality talent where you don't have to bring everybody full time on your payroll for from the very beginning. The first thing is to identify people who fit the mission and values of your organization, right? Good question is how would you identify that during an interview, right? If you ask what is meaningful to them, why they've been on their job for a while, what has been the most significant thing that they've done in the course of their career, and why it was that. If it's really about the name, the number, the this, that, or the fact it's going to give me, you can tell. Also, irony comes with experience as well, right? But I would say that what has also worked for us is that because I have had, so first and foremost, some of the people that I've had to hire while I was in Kuramo before I did the transition, they had asked about me from where I had worked, right? They went back to organizations and
Did the
they heard
background check on you?
at least one person, one person, my very first major hire, he told me he had to go and he had to go and ask uh, people in Templars about me. And I said, "Oh, what did you hear about me?" And then the same thing, right? The someone who we're going to hire. last year had said, "Oh, I saw XYZ on your website, right?" And I went to ask him that, okay, what's this company about? All of that. And what he had to say about Salt Advisory, about what we were building, and about me based on his experience working directly with me. I'm sure sharing both my strengths and weaknesses, and and so he, at least during the interview, he said, "Oh, I really want to work with you. I've heard a lot about you." I'm like, "Okay, nice, fantastic," but I'm also a tough. You have to be hardworking and all that, and if hardworking is not a big deal for you, but more importantly, just believing in the dream, vision. In terms of retention, I think you need to be genuinely interested in people. You need to be genuinely, you need to build a relationship. And where I came from, we have a very good culture. We're like a family, right? Even though you might not be friends with everybody, but just being, if you're a kind person and one, you uphold professionalism, you meritocracy, and as whilst people would say that, oh, there is office politics, as a business owner, if to the extent possible, if you can avoid office politics, what is office politics? Prefer Given preferential treatments. If you can eliminate that, and people know that, they will get seen for the value that they put in, and they are not going to be passed by because they are not this, they are not that. You are People would feel confidence, right, in the brand, and it makes it more compelling to believe that they have a future in the organization. um if you We try to do check-ins with people. Hey, okay, 3 months check-in, feedback from them on the organization. What are we doing? We had a retreat recently. What are we doing differently? What do you think we can do? Like, hearing from them and creating a culture where people can actually. I remember one of our hires who came and he said he was always using ma'am, Miss Fashola. I'm like, we don't do that here, right? Because it breaks that barrier. It helps people to connect better. It's okay if you have that culture, that's okay, right? But when you're having a retreat and you're asking people, what can we do differently? What can we People then see that their values are their opinions are valued. I beg your pardon, right? They see themselves as being part of the team. I think and then you check in from them on from time to time, right? Okay, what are your goals? What are you planning to do? I know that I ask my team members, I know that in Nigeria there's a Japa syndrome. Are you looking to go do your masters anytime soon? Ask them, and people will be truthful, right? Hey, okay, you want this, where would you like to be, right? A year from now? Do you want to gain access to more transactions? What kind more Do you understand what kind of transactions? Someone has given me feedback that incorporates. I like to work in a segregated format where one person is working on a deal, another person is working on. I said, okay, can we incorporate everybody so that everybody has, and then you take that feedback on board, you take it under advisement, you work on it, and there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to.
Retain people.
At least
Are
that's what we are doing
doing.
right now.
And I'm sure that, I mean, great thoughts you've shared, Moji, right? Great thoughts you've shared. I'm sure that as the organization become larger and larger and larger, right, and becomes more complex for you to directly have like relationship with everybody, it will evolve. But for the size of team, right, I think people will find this very helpful, right? Because not everybody that have to go and hire like a full-time HRD or a culture person and stuff like that, right? So all these practices and ideas you shared, I think people will find, quite helpful. Now, let's begin to bring this home a little bit, right? I'm checking the time for you. It's already more than 1 hour 30 minutes. We can actually continue for another an hour, but let me begin to bring it to a close. Um, uh, Moji, and I know you've not been doing this like for a long time. Like your transition to entrepreneurship has not been for a long time, but I also believe that even within that short period, if you look back, right, there are a few, two, three, four, five things, right, that you probably have done differently at the point of either transitioning or starting, right? Um, do you get what I mean? Like, if I have to do it, start it afresh again. Now, it's been a great ride. Don't get me wrong. It's been a solid ride. You're doing well for yourself and for your team and all of that, and business is good. But if you look back and you say, okay, let's say I have the opportunity to start this again, or let's say even there is another opportunity to start something while this one is running, right? What will you do differently, right? From, differently from than the way you started off Salt Advisory, right? What would you approach differently um, in this new startup? Does that make sense?
Interestingly, nothing readily comes to mind.
Good.
Interestingly, because it wasn't a decision that I took. I had my son in 2022.
Mm,
I I had the conversation. I came back from my mat leave end of 2022. I had the conversation in 2024.
mm,
In 2023, there was a time I was pushing my resumes out. There was a time I was doing that, and I didn't feel convinced. Right, I was seeing some interesting rules, interesting, but I didn't have that conviction in my
mm,
spirit. So I had the opportunity before I eventually made that decision. Remember, I
mm,
was working as an employee and doing my work. I think I had the opportunity to think through it very
mm,
well
mm,
and to test different scenarios.
mm, mm. But could you have started earlier?
No, I think I started at the right
Perfect
time.
time. Cool, 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 cool. Thanks for sharing that. I mean, very helpful to know that when people take time to probably think these things through, right? Mistakes can be avoided, right? Learnings can be minimized. It's not, I mean, it's not bad to get learnings, but taking your time to think it through, to consult with people and all of that, I think probably help minimize that. Now, a funny question to you, Moji, right? A funny question, and then I'll ask you to share your final thoughts. Now, the funny question is: are you looking for more clients?
Of course.
I told you to.
I'm actively in the market. So I'm looking for the major uh, challenge I have right now is I'm the CEO. I'm looking for business. I'm still doing a level of the work in terms of oversight of the work. Um, you would also be involved in hiring as HR. Yes, you can do a bit of outsourcing and all of that. So day one, you're doing strategy. Day two, you're doing work as a lawyer or as a business person, or right. Day three, you're thinking of okay, growth, expansion, and all of that. So I need more clients. If I can get clients, I definitely need, I'm looking for more clients. I need money, seriously. Like,
What you like to? Okay, so the follow up question to that is on the list, right? But follow up question to that is: what are you guys doing, right? So I know that you inherited some business and all of that, but are there things you're doing to generate awareness, to create awareness of the things the services you offer?
okay, so that's a good question because it's one that I've been thinking about recently. You know me very well, right? So
A
this
little
is an
bit.
area, visibility, and being intentional about visibility is something that I'm still working on actively, right? Because I am a I think I'm quiet, or I'm not someone who is out there or who makes noise on social media, right? But right now, content creation or visibility is actually the new currency in business, right? And that's one area that we're working on actively. So we've decided that we're going to be doing a lot of thought leadership, right? To enhance our brand and visibility so that people would read. I mean, thought leadership, but at the same time, is not going to be too long. Just snippet that people can read so that we can share our knowledge and the market knows that we're here and it can start bringing top of mind awareness. Another thing we're doing is we're identifying the gaps that we're identifying in the industry, either from a regulatory perspective or what have you, where we want to be seen as change makers. What can we're thinking from a transformational perspective. How can we transform the market to help our prospective clients on one hand, but to it also gives us that visibility so that people know what we do. So right now we're doing a white paper to a regulator, identifying, because we sit at that pivotal seat where you have an investor's perspective because you've been an investor, right? Finance manager, CFO, general counsel of an investor. Now you are an advisor, right? So you are talking from the perspective of a practitioner. You are not an outsider who is advising someone. So we bring in a practical nuance into how we advise, and we see that we can take it a notch higher by even shaping the ecosystem and being market builders. So that's another area we're currently working on. We're doing some white papers to regulators, but we're still thinking about it. I'm good. It's one that keeps me up because I know that yes, we started off well, we have very good backing, but we also want to scale and we want to be sustainable. Nothing is guaranteed or assured. And this is our reality. So we need to expand our clientele base and we really need to be out there such that at some point I think we want a brand that the business is now coming because people know what we do and not necessarily because it is within our network, right? That's why we got the business. We want people to know what we are and what we do. And we've tried as much as possible to build our brand independent of where we came from. Contrary in conversations, right? But the whole idea is actually because we're actually independent, right? I just happen to be former and they're now one of my clients. But the whole idea is that we actually want to build that independent brand that is
No, I agree. I think leveraging on that identity of where you're coming from and all of that can only take you so far. And I think it's opened some great doors for you, and it will probably continue to open some doors. But you probably also want to build on that and do even way more. So way to go, way to go. There is a lady that came on adventures sometimes last year, if I recall, who is into something along these lines of what you're saying. Maybe after this interview we kind of pick up on it. Her name is Tolly Combs, right? And she's into things like that. I think you guys may be able to find some sweet spot to do some partnership together. But it's been exciting talking to you, Moji, right? We've we spoke last year, but nothing near this depth and this conversation around your journey, both as a career person and as a business leader. Now, who now looks over, a very, a very viable and profitable business I had, and you have oversight over people, and I think it's a privilege that a lot of people don't have, and you have that, and you're making the most of it. So well done and congratulations to you once again. Now, to wrap these up, I usually like to ask our guests to leave a final thought to aspiring entrepreneurs, their younger selves, and all of that. um I think this would be a good point to ask you to share that. What, if you want to advise an entrepreneur that's just thinking of starting or something, what advice you really have for them? You've been on the journey, you've seen some of the pitfalls, you've not just from yourself, you've seen it from other businesses that you supported. What would you say to them?
Okay, I'm just going to mention a few muscles, right? Internal muscles that would determine whether you're going to survive in the journey or not. And to make that call, final call on entrepreneurship, you need to be practicing some of these things now. You've got to have a growth mindset, right? What does that mean? You should be willing to learn, iterate, and improve, you know, take feedbacks. Hardworking, that's a no-brainer. Grit and resilience, no-brainer, right? And because there'll be times of uncertainties, setback, and resilience is what's going to keep you steady, right, during that period, and just fixing your eyes on the ball. You have to be self-motivated and disciplined. You need to be able to push yourself without external structure, right? Because when you start your entrepreneurial journey, you may not have that structure, right? So you need to be you need to have that self-discipline. You definitely want to be convinced about what you're doing. That inner conviction, don't go into it if you are not very certain that this would work, or if you're not very certain that this is what you want to do. Because when the challenges start coming in, you don't want to throw in the towel and say, okay, you know what, I'm done. You're more or less giving up on it. The expectation is high, either from different stakeholders, right? So make sure that that conviction, ability to hold on to your vision, hold on to the vision whilst adapting and revising your strategy, and you know and then you need to be able to take on risk. You must be a risk taker, really, in order to do business. And one final thing is that you must be very, very strategic in your approach. I know we use this a lot, but it means that the ability to see the big picture from the very beginning. Seeing the big picture means that it could go this way, it could go south, or it could take baby steps. And for each scenario, you need to be able to have you need to be able to have plans that if it goes this way, this is what we do. If it goes baby steps, this is what we do. And if it goes south, this is what we will do. If you have all of that in place, it would help your entrepreneurial journey. You won't have surprises because you've already thought about it well ahead of time, and nothing is taking you by surprise.
Wow, wow, wow. Thank you so much, Moji. Thank you once again for coming on the adventures. Thank you for all that you have shared from your heart. right? And for being vulnerable and for just sharing everything the way you shared them. I'm sure a lot of people will get a lot of value from this conversation, right? Thank you so much. And with that, we've come officially to the end of the interview. Hey, thanks a lot for taking the time to watch the podcast. We are super thankful for you taking that time and investing the time to learn. We hope that you find the story inspiring, and beyond that, that you've been able to articulate one or two things that you want to do differently in your own entrepreneurial journey. May I encourage you to please like, subscribe, comment, and please share the word within your own circle of influence, especially within those that you think are on the same entrepreneurial journey with you. May I also encourage you to please, beyond subscribing to our YouTube channel, follow us on our other social media platforms. That means a lot to us, and we can see that that helps us to track that we're making some progress and so making some impact. Thanks a lot once again for taking the time to watch, and please see you on the next episode.